Kirill from Moscow, Russia. 5 years. He has been listening to the Sound Off. So, what's up to Kirill? My question is about Kevin Nash. Throughout his career, Nash has been criticized by a lot of people, including wrestlers like Ric Flair, for having almost zero talent when it comes to his in-ring abilities. Even though Nash has always looked at wrestling as just a source of making money, I can't say that he has no talent at all. Can you name the 3 top matches of Kevin Nash's career? I've heard Ric Flair say that before. That Nash has. He didn't say that Nash has little talent. He said Nash has no talent. I think it may have been on one of those old Legends Roundtable shows that WWE used to do. That is a very stupid thing to say. Of course, Kevin Nash had talent. He was never going to be wrestling circles around anybody. And he definitely ended up in the lucky sperm pool. 7 feet tall. Vince took one look at him and probably saw dollar signs from day one. A big man in that company is always going to get more chances than a little man will. That's just the way it is. And I still think that's true even today. It might be truer to a lesser extent, but that's just because there aren't as many big guys in the company. It used to be a big man's company, and it would be rare to find guys, especially guys they would push, who were quote-unquote normal size. It's very different today than it was, 30 years ago. But I still think the same logic applies when it comes to Vince McMahon, that if he sees a big guy, whether he's tall or just jacked to the gills or whatever the case may be, his eyes probably bug out of his head. That person is going to get more opportunities than most people would. But to say that Nash had no talent is ridiculous. And I'm sure Ric Flair has forgotten more about wrestling than I'll ever know. 40 some odd years in the business. It's still a stupid thing to say. Even if he had to be in there with guys far better than him for him to have a really good match, you still need to know what you're doing in there. You need to be able to work. You gotta remember, Nash was hanging around with guys like Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall and Sean Waltman back in the mid-90s when he first came in to WWE. Either he was watching them work night after night after night, or he was working with them, he was working against them. It's hard not to pick up by osmosis, if nothing else, a few things from those guys and at least be good at what you're doing. Nash has had a bunch of memorable matches that are worth going back and watching. In fact, I just rewatched the match that he had with Bret Hart at the Royal Rumble back in 1995 because I'm doing this top 10 countdown of all the greatest Rumble title matches, so I wanted to go back and rewatch them all before I ranked them. Now, I won't spoil if that match ends up in the countdown, but I will say it was not any better or any worse than I remember it being. And I think that he and Bret had a much better match at Survivor Series later that year. I would say that Survivor Series match in 95 would be one of the 3 best matches that Nash ever had. I also have to give praise to the first match he had with Bret in their trilogy. I wouldn't put that in my top 3, but definitely deserves some recognition. Unless you count the cage match, that they had in 96 before WrestleMania, I guess technically that would make 4 matches. But I look at it really as a trilogy, starting with their King of the Ring match in 94 for the WWF title. That was the infamous Art Donovan show. That was the first, I think, truly great match of Kevin Nash's career. That was actually a really good match that probably is what convinced Vince McMahon to put the championship on Nash later in the year. Like I said, not one of the top 3 that King of the Ring match was, but definitely worth a watch. The No Holds Barred match with Shawn Michaels and Good Friends, Better Enemies is the best match that Kevin Nash ever had. And if I had to pick a third one to round out the top 3, there is a really underrated tag team match that he was part of back in 94. It aired on a show called Action Zone. It used to air on the weekends, I think Sunday mornings on WWE television. I remember when Todd Pettengill and Doc Hendricks used to co-host it together. It aired on Action Zone. It's actually included on, I think, a couple of different DVDs, but there was a DVD dedicated entirely to the Click that WWE put out a few years ago. I know it's on an old Coliseum video. I think it's called Slam Jam or Slam Fest or something like that. It might be on the network since they have a bunch of Coliseum videos up there. But it was Diesel and Shawn Michaels against Razor Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid. Track that match down and watch it if you've never seen it. It is a really, really good match. I would say Diesel probably, did the least work of the bunch, but he was still part of that match. And I think it's absolutely one of the best matches that he was ever part of. So, if you want me to rank them, I would say third place would be that tag team match. Second place would be the match with Bret at Survivor Series in 95, where Bret takes the table bump and Nash turns heel at the end. And number one has to be the no holds barred match with Shawn Michaels at In Your House.